Joining us now to examine this is an attorney and an author and a political strategist from Dallas, Texas. Debbie Georgatos joins us. She is the author of a book called Ladies, Can We Talk? Her goal, her mission, is to get more women to vote conservative, not just Republican, but conservative. So as you can imagine, her perspective on this is vital. Debbie, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. So you want to help ladies or convince ladies to vote not just Republican for the Republican candidates, but for conservatives. So let me ask you, what, as a female, what do you think women are thinking right now when they hear Donald Trump saying that in his world, if he were president and abortion were to be illegal, that the women should be punished for getting them?
You know, this is just another one of the countless examples in Donald Trump's presidential campaign where what he's really showing is he hasn't spent a lot of time thinking through issues in depth. This particular issue about pro-life or pro-choice, I mean, this is something on the conservative side. The messaging has been so carefully worded, and rightly so, to urge that we don't, abortion, we're standing for life on the conservative side. But we don't, it's not a punishment of women. We want to embrace women, embrace the baby, help you, support you. This could just not be more detrimental to him. I really hope the GOP and the other candidates have denounced it. But this just sets back, it plays into the narrative of the American left that the conservatives or Republicans cannot tolerate or support women. It couldn't be a worse thing. But you're right. He's Donald Trump. He somehow gets away with it. But this is a really bad one.
What do you think this is going to do to the pro-life movement in general? Because here's the problem, Debbie. Donald Trump has claimed that he is pro-life, and okay, even though for his entire adult career before running for president, he's been pro-choice, even pro-partial birth abortion. He said abortion in all its forms he supported. But now he claims to be pro-life, so let's take him at his word. He's pro-life. How are voters, particularly moderate voters, and again, people who are maybe not as pro-life as the true conservatives are, how is that going to paint all of us as conservatives and the Republicans as a party if they hear somebody who says he's pro-life saying we need to punish these women for doing this?
There certainly could be some harm to the GOP just in general by this comment. It's why it's so important for the party, for the RNC, for the other candidates to denounce the position, because the left, in conjunction with the mainstream media, counts on anything that conservatives say that can possibly sound bad. And this will be used during the entire campaign if he wins the nomination. This will be used because the truth is people kind of assume you say what you mean when you're speaking off the cuff, and your correction 2 hours later won't ring true. So I just think it hurts him with women voters. And I will say in this particular election cycle, I don't think there's an uber popular candidate on the left. I think that Hillary, if she's not in jail, is a deeply flawed candidate. There may be some a large swath of kind of middle-of-the-road voters who do not like their two choices on the left, and we're trying to assess the right. And I just think for women especially, it will drive them away from the GOP and certainly from Donald Trump.
Does this give Hillary new ammunition to restart the quote-unquote war on women part of her campaign? She tried to use that before, and in fact, Obama has used it in the past, saying I'm going to be for women, but particularly Hillary. And they, you know what the argument is, and you're going to hear, if this is our nominee, you're going to hear he wants to punish women who have abortions. You're going to hear replayed over and over and over again the brutal attacks on people like Megyn Kelly and Carly Fiorina, and most recently on Heidi Cruz. These kinds of things are going to go over and over and over again. She'll have ammo if they want to claim war on women. Ladies, we need to stop this man, vote for me.
She will, and she will use it. It'll be in one of her main arguments in the general election if she's facing Donald Trump. I will say, though, among women voters, to be fair about it, among especially younger women voters, this new generation coming out of college is more pro-life than the generation ahead of them, than Hillary's generation. So maybe those pro-life people will just hang in there with the GOP, ignore this big kind of mess that Donald Trump created. I do think it's possible it won't hurt the GOP as much as it might have in the past, because it's not a GOP position. I've never heard any candidate ever talking about punishing the woman. This is just, it's way out of the bounds.
You know, and obviously he doesn't prepare for things very much when it comes to interviews. We're talking with Debbie Georgatos, an author, an attorney, and a political strategist from Dallas. Her book is called Ladies, Can We Talk? He doesn't prepare very much, but he did give it some thought. If you heard that clip, and I could play it again, that short pause before, you know, when Chris Matthews says, "Should there be punishment?" Listen to this just real quick.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
And there was that long pause where he's like, what am I going to say here? Yes, there is. And to me, that is staggering that he isn't already prepared for, you know, this is my position on abortion, this is my position on this, and I know how to answer these questions because I'm going to anticipate them. It's as if everything, honest to goodness, is ad-libbed. I've thought of on the spot, and I'll clean it up later if I need to. And again, in this cycle, it hasn't hurt him. He still leads. He's still the odds-on favorite to win the nomination. But in a general election cycle, ad-libbing a campaign is going to be deadly.
Absolutely it is. And I think Senator Cruz's comment about what Donald Trump said was really among the most insightful. He just basically said, this is the latest demonstration of how little Donald has thought about the major issues. And that's what it really is. In many contexts and other issues in this campaign, it's almost an unserious approach to his candidacy. Just, I'm so smart and successful, I can just wing it on big issues. And I think I am hopeful. I'm in the camp of people who says it still is not set in stone that Donald Trump will win the GOP nomination. I still think Senator Cruz has a chance to prevent Donald Trump from getting to the magic number of 1,237 delegates. That is, if you're concerned about Donald Trump, or your listeners are, and I am, I think there's a path for the GOP to ultimately get Ted Cruz as the candidate, who is, I think, going to be more viable, and the polling shows that more viable than Donald Trump would be against Hillary.
I'm a Cruz supporter. I have endorsed him on my radio program for what it's worth here in Northeast Ohio, and I know you're down there in Texas, which is Cruz country, but I'm not as confident about that path to 1237, primarily because of our governor, John Kasich's continued presence in a race he has no business being in. He's 1-28 in primaries. He has 0. Literally, mathematically, he would have to get 120% of the remaining delegates to get to 1237. And since that's not possible, he is only counting on a brokered convention. My question to you, Debbie, is if we get to a brokered convention, if nobody gets 1237, you know, a lot of political insiders are saying Ted Cruz does not have a chance because those party elite members would never support a guy like that and try to convince the delegates to support him, given his unpopularity in D.C.
I'm well aware of all the speculation that perhaps the RNC is going to try to swoop in and put someone as the GOP nominee who didn't even participate in the race. There's obviously talk about Paul Ryan or other GOP more mainstream types that would be just more acceptable but to the RNC. But I really do not think the GOP will end up doing that. I think that even they can see that would be suicidal for the party to give it would be a stab in the back of the voters who got behind Trump or Cruz or even Kasich. So I don't think they're going to bring an outsider in. So then you're just looking at the 3 remaining in the race. I couldn't agree more. John Kasich is just a spoiler at this point, and he knows he's a spoiler. It's very, very troublesome it says something about him that he will stay in the race. But what I do think is if no one gets that 1,237 delegates in the first vote, the delegates up there are going to have to think about things like who's on a trajectory going upwards. Is Trump's support waning? Are his numbers going down as the primaries go on and on up until July? And are Ted Cruz's numbers going up? It's going to be a battle royal. But I will say this. I think the RNC, the GOP in Washington, they don't like Ted Cruz. But it's not because he's a mean, bad guy. It's because he doesn't play the party game, which is what he said when he ran in Texas that he would do. He would stand for the principles he ran on, and he went to the Senate and he stood in those principles. That's what's angered a lot of people in the GOP about him, because he doesn't play the party game. And I think that's what the voters will find about him. He's kind of the outsider who is, he's served in the Senate, so technically he's an insider, but he's really more of an outsider. And to be fair to you, too, or to your listeners, I have not endorsed him on my show, but His father translated my book into Spanish for me. I know the Cruz family. They are a stellar character, and I am supporting him.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? I really wish more people, and this is not, please don't take this as a dig, I wish more people who do support him would come out and say, I endorse him, particularly in Washington, D.C., because everything you said is spot on. He is not disliked for any reason other than he has been the one who has bucked the establishment. He is trying to change the insiders of Washington from the inside, and people don't like that. When he won't go along to get along the way everybody else in D.C. does, that really, kind of roils them, and I think that's what people need to realize. The problem is, Debbie, it's been 10 months. Most people have been trying to explain that to people and portray Cruz in that light, that he is the true outsider here based on what he has done in the Senate and the enemies he has made, and yet it hasn't worked, at least enough to be in the lead right now. He's still trailing by a couple of hundred delegates behind Donald Trump.
He is, and on your subject of Governor Kasich, it is really a challenging thing to get the message to voters in the primary states where voting has not yet occurred. Understand, if you support John Kasich, you're hurting the party's chances of having a more successful convention, taking his numbers out, and having really down to the two people who could actually win. That your vote for Kasich is, at a minimum, perhaps a vote for a mess at the convention, a vote for division in the party. And, as you look at all the polling, I'm sure you've talked about in your show, too, the polling continues to show that Donald Trump cannot beat Hillary Clinton. And he is, oddly, in my view, but oddly, the most unvetted of all of the candidates in this race, Donald Trump. He's been on the front page of magazines. He's been famous for years. But that's not the same thing as political vetting, which will start the day after he wins the nomination. I
completely agree. And yet here's the kicker in all of this. If he ends up being our nominee, we have no choice but to coalesce behind him. If he ends up getting to 1237 or somehow winning on the floor in the vote at the convention, we have got to stop Hillary Clinton at any and all costs from getting into that White House. And that's the irony of this whole thing, is somehow, some way, we're going to have to find a way to look past all of those incredibly, deeply offensive, quote-unquote, warts of his and his missteps and his statements and so on and so forth in order to make sure the Democrats don't get another 4 years or 8 years in the White House. Debbie Georgatos, I want to ask you to respond to that because I know we're out of time. In fact, we're 5 minutes past our time. Debbie is an attorney and author and a political strategist from Dallas. Her book, I recommend you pick up, Ladies, Can We Talk? Her goal is to get more women to vote conservative. And Debbie, we appreciate your time. We'll talk again when we have more time next, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll definitely have Debbie back on the air, but now we need a quick time out for traffic right here on AM 1420 The Answer.